Brendon Fallon. Dr. Davis, great to have you back on Vital Signs again.
Thanks, Brendon. Thanks for the invitation.
And excited to have you back to continue our look at microbiome health for women in their menopausal years. Last time you introduced some powerful microbes for boosting health. Today we're going to look at how we get those into our bodies. But first, why is the collective microbiome in such a terrible state?
We live in a world now, our world, where we've disrupted the gastrointestinal microbiome dramatically by the reliance on processed, ultra-processed foods and all the silly, awful, destructive advice coming from official sources to cut your saturated fat, eat more healthy whole grains, everything in moderation. That is lethal advice. That is advice that causes obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, dementia, etc. In other words, this mess we find ourselves in, Brendon, where these diseases are now becoming the rule rather than the exception, it is the fault of dietary guidelines, unclear thinking in diet, and the food industry. Unfortunately, the American diet has gravitated towards heavily weighed in favor of processed and ultra-processed foods. These are frozen dinners. These are cookies, chips, soft drinks, and kids have diets almost exclusively with those kinds of things. Mac and cheese, cheeseburgers, French fries. And a lot of those foods have unhealthy ingredients like emulsifying agents like polysorbate 80 or carboxymethylcellulose, which change the microbial composition of your gastrointestinal tract. Or they have preservatives, BHT, BHA, potassium sorbate, sodium benzoate. Those are antimicrobial. They keep, for instance, mold from growing in your food, but they also have antimicrobial effects in your gastrointestinal tract. And then there's pharmaceuticals that impact the microbiome. So the mouth is filled with microbes, good and bad. And when you lose stomach acid from taking a stomach acid blocking drug, oral microbes are able to descend via swallowing, colonize the stomach, and then colonize the small bowel.
Sorry, the mouth is supposed to be fairly acidic.
It's supposed to be minimally acidic because it's acid that erodes teeth and causes cavities. And that's why grains like wheat, corn, rye, barley are extravagant causes of tooth decay. So we know this with confidence, because we know that prior to the consumption of wheat and grains 10,000 years ago, that tooth decay, incredibly, Brendon, tooth decay was uncommon. So think about that. So tooth decay was uncommon. 1 to 3% of all teeth showed decay, cavities, abscess formation, misalignment, or loss. And this was a time there was no fluoridated toothpaste, there was no fluoridated water, there was no dental floss, there was no dentists, and yet there was almost no tooth decay, which makes sense. If you're living a life of hunting and gathering plants and roots and berries and a lot of your meats, you can't, if you lose your teeth, you can't eat, you're going to die. So it makes sense that people would live their lives with full mouths of teeth. When they incorporated wheat and grains, as they first did in the Fertile Crescent, in what is now Israel and Syria, they gathered wild einkorn wheat. And when they did that, there was an explosion in tooth decay. 16 to 49% of all teeth recovered showed decay, abscess, tooth loss, and misalignment. This was true in every locale where seeds of grasses, that's what grains are, were incorporated, like maize and teosinte in the Central America, millet in sub-Saharan Africa. So over and over again, the anthropological studies have told us when humans consume grains, there's an explosion in tooth decay. So, but anyway.
So on top of all these negative influences on the health of the microbiome that are kind of adding up throughout the lifespan, then a woman hits menopause. Are there specific things that happen that would influence the microbiome at that point?
Many things. Taking a battering from all these influences, and there's more. That's a partial list we just talked about. Grain consumption, glyphosate, preservatives, emulsifying agents, stomach acid blocking drugs. There's more. So for anybody, woman or man, to want to start cleaning up their microbiome, you start by cleaning up your life. You filter your drinking water. You buy organic food whenever available, whenever your budget permits. You get off pharmaceuticals like stomach acid blocking drugs. So we clean up our lives first. One of the things that is a common thread in aging, men and women, but especially impactful for ladies, is the proliferation of a class of microbes called proteobacteria. These are fecal microbes that many of your listeners may recognize. These are species like E. coli and Campylobacter and Salmonella because these are also the species of food poisoning.